Hello and welcome to the English Like a Native podcast. My name is Anna and today we are talking about first time experiences. In my conversation club this morning, I ran a class and we talked about this topic in depth. And I asked my students all the questions that I'm going to ask myself and answer for you. And in doing so, I'm going to highlight some vocabulary as well. So this is great for listening practice. I'd also love to know your answers. So if you are listening via a platform that allows you to comment, like Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, then feel free to put your answers into the comments section. So, first time experiences. We often experience things for the first time many times as a child. So we have lots of first time experiences when we're young because everything's new. And I think that's partly why childhood is so exciting, why children find mystery in the world, why everything is magical, because they don't know anything. And they're discovering everything for the first time. When we get older, we have to work hard to seek out those first time experiences, don't we? Now, the first question on my list of questions is, can you remember the first time you traveled somewhere without your family? Can you remember the first time you traveled somewhere without your family? Where did you go and how did you feel? The first time I traveled anywhere without my mum and my family was as a young teenager. I went just from one city to my hometown, the place where I was born, Southport. Which, if you were to go in a car, it's probably just over an hour in a car to go from Manchester out to Southport. Don't quote me on that because I haven't driven from Manchester to Southport many times. I lived in Manchester as a child, not so much as a driving adult. But I believe it's about an hour, give or take. Give or take is a nice phrase. You add that on after you give a quantity, maybe a quantity of time, money, just any general value. And it means that that's an approximate amount. It's close to what it really is. So give or take. How tall are you? I'm about 160 centimeters, give or take. I could be 161. I could be 158. But I'm around 160 centimeters, give or take. Anyway, I often went from Manchester to Southport in a car as a child. I wasn't paying attention to how long it took. I was focusing on not being ill because I suffered with travel sickness a lot as a child. I'd get car sick. Anyway, for whatever reason, my parents didn't want to ferry me. They didn't want to taxi me from one place to another. My mother and father separated when I was a baby, so I would go from Manchester, where I lived with my mother, to visit my father in Southport. I'm giving you my whole life story here. Anyway, I was going to go to Southport, but nobody wanted to taxi me, so they said, you can get on the train. It's a direct train from Manchester to Southport. Easy peasy. So my mum dropped me off at the train station. Now, Piccadilly train station in Manchester is a major train station. There are many platforms. And my mum checked in advance which platform I needed to go to and what time my train would depart. So she arrived at the train station and dropped me off and said, go to this platform, let's say platform 8. That's where you'll find the train going to Southport. Phone me when you get there. Now, this was back in the day when we didn't have mobile phones. And so I would have to get to Southport, arrive at my father's house, and use his landline telephone to call my mum. Now, I was very naive. I wandered into this huge train station, armed with my money. I went to the ticket office and I bought my ticket. I took my ticket wide-eyed and I wandered over to the right platform. There was a train there at the platform, so I got on it. And the train left the station. And I sat on the train for about 40 minutes. And I didn't recognise any of the places that we were calling at. And then eventually a train conductor came down the aisle and he was like, "Tickets, please. Let me see your tickets, please." I showed him my ticket and he said, "Oh, you're going to Southport?" "Yes, I'm going to Southport. It's my first time leaving somewhere on my own, going somewhere on my own." And he said, "Oh dear, you're on the wrong train." I was like, "What? Oh no, what do I do? I'm very young. I have no money and I don't have a phone. We didn't have phones. What do I do?" And he said, "Right, get off at the next station, go to the opposite platform, tell them you've been overcarried, jump on a train, go back in the direction that we came, then get off at another station and get a train connecting over to Southport." It was a little bit traumatic for me because I don't like feeling out of my depth. To feel out of your depth means that you feel very uncomfortable or overwhelmed in a situation. So I was completely out of my depth. I didn't know how the train system worked. I didn't understand what I was supposed to do to understand the timetables. It was very different back then. Now we have these electronic boards that flash up what train is coming to the platform next. And they have announcements to tell you what train this is and what direction it's going in and where it will call on its way to its destination. But back then, everything was just written on one big board and you had to ask the train staff if they could help you. In the end, I got to my destination, my final destination. I did have to go to a payphone. And because I had no money, I did this thing that we did a lot in my childhood, which is to reverse the charges. So you can use a public phone, or at least in the past you could lift up a public phone and put in a certain combination of numbers. You'd get the operator and you'd ask them to reverse the charges and you'd tell them the number you wanted to call. That's novel, isn't it? We don't do that anymore. Does anybody remember any phone number apart from your own? In the past, I knew so many phone numbers. I had so many of them stored in my memory banks, but now only my own number. My children know my phone number. I taught them my number in the form of a song because we always remember tunes and songs. So I gave them a little song to rhyme, not to rhyme, again. So I gave them a little song to remember my number. Anyway, I won't digress. But I told my mum what had happened so that she could phone my father and tell him that I would be late because I'd been overcarried on the wrong train. So that was my first experience of travelling somewhere alone. It was traumatic. And I learnt very quickly that you can't just jump on any train and hope that it goes to the right place. What about you? Can you remember the first time you travelled somewhere without your family? The next question is, what is something you were nervous to try for the first time, but later enjoyed? What was something that you were nervous to try the first time, but later enjoyed? I had to really think hard about this one because there are many things that I felt anxious about doing. But once I got into it, I felt really good about. And the one I think I'm going to share with you is climbing. Climbing. Notice I don't pronounce the B. Climbing. Many of my friends and my partner, my current partner, are into climbing. Now, I've said that twice, to be into something. If you are into something, then it means you really enjoy it. You really like it. You're very interested in it. So many people around me, around 10 years ago, were into climbing in a big way. And I thought, I want to hang out with these amazing people at the climbing center, but I'm scared of heights. And I don't know how I'm going to feel about climbing those huge walls. But I don't like to let fear hold me back. I don't like to be stopped by my own anxiety. And climbing looked cool. So I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to do it. And I was really nervous the first few times, especially when we were bouldering. In the world of climbing, when you're bouldering, you are climbing without ropes. The walls, when you're bouldering, are not as high, but they're still high. You could still hurt yourself if you fell from the top and landed funny. But, and I did have a few little scrapes and bumps and bruises from climbing, but generally, even though I was nervous at first, I really got into it and really enjoyed it. And actually that fear very quickly turns into this like adrenaline rush when you overcome the fear. So when you do something that scares you, then you feel immense excitement afterwards, a real feeling of accomplishment. So tell me about something that you were nervous to try the first time, but later enjoyed. The next question is, do you think first impressions are usually accurate? And tell me the reason for your opinion. I think it's hard to accurately judge a book by its cover. We should never judge a book by its cover. This is a lovely saying. Don't judge a book by its cover. It means you don't really know what a person's like from the outside or from one short interaction. You really need to spend time with someone and experience that person in a number of situations to truly understand who they are. My best friends tell me that I was quite closed off, a little bit prickly even. If someone's described as prickly, then they're not easy to be friendly with. They are a little sharp with their words, perhaps a bit blunt, direct. Maybe they cut off conversation a little early. I don't remember coming across as prickly, but my friends now regularly remind me how much they had to persevere to wear me down, to find the soft center that is Anna. I certainly hope I don't come across as prickly here on the podcast. But I think first impressions, you might get some accurate readings on people from the first meeting, but generally I think it takes more time to truly know what a person is like. Somebody I went to college with who seemed like the most compliant, well-behaved, respectable, honourable person on my course. So much so that they were chosen to be, I don't even know what the word is, but an assistant to the head of department. They were given privileges to be able to go into the college office and handle paperwork and do top secret academic things. because they were trusted. I later found out, many years down the line, that they were on not the FBI. What's the British equivalent of the FBI? Oh my gosh, what's the British equivalent of the FBI? Alexa, what is the British equivalent of the FBI?
I don't know that one.
Even Alexa doesn't know. Anyway, it's not coming to me. But they were on the most wanted list. They were among the top 10 most wanted criminals in the UK for fraud. And I was gobsmacked. And I had spent quite a lot of time with this person. So you never truly know someone, I don't think. Not truly. All right, next question. Tell us about a time when you first met someone who became important in your life. And what do you remember about that moment? I'm going to tell you about my partner, Nick. When we first met, I had been kind of set up to meet him with the idea that he might be someone of interest to me. So my friend knew that I was on the market looking for somebody. And she thought that maybe I'd like to meet her friend, Nick, because he was also on the market and she thought we might be a good fit. And I agreed to go and meet her and her friend with some other people. There was a group of us. But the reason that she invited me and him to this event was because she wanted to introduce us. So I went along with big expectations. And I think sometimes having high expectations is a negative thing. I think it can undermine your experience. Alternatively, if you go in with low expectations, then what actually occurs is likely to exceed your expectations. You'll likely be pleasantly surprised. So I went in to this meeting with very high expectations. And I met Nick. And Nick is an amazing person. But at the time I had these crazy expectations. And I think when you have an expectation of the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with, and then you meet a stranger, of course they're going to be different. They're a stranger. I don't know what it was I was expecting, but I met Nick and I thought, you don't fit the mold of what I imagined in my head. And so I was a bit prickly on that night. As soon as I saw him and spoke to him for a few moments, I thought, no, you're not the person I'm going to spend my life with. And then we met again and again. And then we went on a group holiday with friends and we became really good friends. And I really got to know him. And I didn't have any pressure anymore because I'd already decided he wasn't the person for me. And so I allowed us to become friends and really get to know each other without expectation. And then I thought, you know what? You are an amazing person. You're the kind of person I want to spend my life with. Why am I not with you? And the rest is history. So that was the first time, not the most romantic start to what has been a beautiful relationship so far. Last question. Have you ever had a first-time experience that went completely wrong? So have you ever done something for the first time that went completely wrong? For me, it was when I first went scuba diving. Where was I? I think I was on a Greek island. Maybe, where was I? I was in Cyprus. I was on holiday in Cyprus and we decided to do a taster session scuba diving. We had a very short safety briefing. We were told how to use the equipment and then we were off. and there was a small group of us. And we're going along from the shallow part of the ocean and getting a little deeper and a little deeper and a little deeper. And then suddenly somebody kicked me in the face. Now, I am quite anxious about many things. I was nervous about heights. I was terrified of deep water. And someone kicked me in the face when we were quite a long way down. When they kicked me in the face, they knocked my respirator out of my mouth. Now, we had 2 respirators, the main one and then the backup, in case anything went wrong with the first one. I was obviously shocked, and so I took a mouthful of water, and I had no experience with clearing the water out of my mouth or anything like that. I just knew that you had to press the button when you put your respirator back in. Now, I couldn't see my respirator. It floated off behind me, so I just reached and grabbed the first one that came to hand. I grabbed the backup. I pushed the backup in my mouth and I pressed hard. And what it does is it actually it's supposed to shoot air into your mouth. But this backup hadn't been turned on properly. And so I just had a jet of water shot into the back of my throat. And then I was panicking because I was coughing and spluttering. All this water was in my mouth, down my throat, and I was in a panic. So I instantly headed for the surface. But the dive master who was leading us had told us we weren't allowed to surface. Obviously, it's not safe. You don't just leave your group, and if you come up too quickly, it's not good. Anyway, he saw me darting up and he grabbed me by the ankle and pulled me back down. And he was like, no, don't do that. And I'm like, I'm out. I need to go up. And he saw that I had no respirator in my mouth. And so he came up with me and then he shouted at me on the surface. And I told him what happened. So he took my respirator and he realized that the backup hadn't been turned on properly. He was apologizing profusely. And the rest is history. But what that experience did do was it had a lasting impression on me. If something has a lasting impression on you, then it means that you remember it for a long time. So it took me quite a few years to feel brave enough to consider scuba diving again, because I didn't want to be in that situation ever again, where I'm deep in the water and I suddenly have no air to breathe and I'm choking. I did end up back in the ocean many years later. I actually ended up doing my advanced PADI qualification and going very deep. And I did some diving in Egypt and had a wonderful time. And I would do it again. But that first experience did have a lasting impression on me. And it still makes me feel slightly anxious when I think about it. But I would encourage you to take anything that you want to do but avoid because you feel anxious and decide to just give it a go. Because at least if you give it a go and you realize it's not right for you, then you can say, I tried. But give it a go. Don't live with regret. Give it a go and step out of your comfort zone. Step out of your comfort zone. Do something that challenges you, that makes you feel uncomfortable. Have these amazing experiences and make your life more interesting. I hope that you found today useful. If you would like to get more from your listening experience, then you can access the transcript as well as comprehension questions and the opportunity to answer writing prompts and get feedback from my AI study buddy within the Podcast Plus membership. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. And until next time, take care and goodbye.